Hello, Namaskar, and welcome to Talking Point Blank. So, we are on the other episode of a special series we are doing on Pakistan, India, and of course, Operation Sindoor. And today I have a very eminent guest with me, a prolific author who has authored multiple books on India's military history. He's a military historian as well, Shiv Kunal Verma ji. Sir, thank you so much for being on this show. I really thank you for the time, for taking
Thank
this
you for
out for
having
us.
me here. We met, I think, a few months ago in Srinagar, and very nice to be here again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, your roots start from Kashmir. So, and you have covered from, conflicts across India, whether it is on the eastern border or it's been on our western border. Kargil, you made a fantastic documentary. How do you see the journey right from the beginning, where started from Kashmir? And
Well, my family roots are actually my grandfather, his father, that's great grandfather. He was a Kashmiri Pandit. And that is the time before independence when the Arya Samaj movement in Punjab had really become the focal point around which the entire independence movement was being done, was happening in this part of the world. So the two main centers at that time were Jalandhar and Moga. And he was a lawyer, he was a barrister, and he was there, and there he met this lady who was a Rajput from Kannauj. Though her father was in CP in Berar, in Berar Kingdom. He was in service with the Nizam of Hyderabad. He'd been his prime minister or some senior position like that. So they fell in love and they got married. And that marriage itself in those days created quite a dhamaka because ye hota nahi tha. She died at childbirth and it became a big problem. This gentleman was completely heartbroken. So he handed over this boy child, to the mother, the grandparents, Shivratan Verma and his wife, and he went back to Kashmir, where he restarted his life. He had a different surname, but when he got married again, he had four children. They were all known by the name Nath. Most of them settled in Jammu later. Two of my dad's buas were actually teaching in Srinagar University, things like that. So the name, of course, was my grandfather took his maternal grandfather's Verma. That's why we are Vermas. And then he died shortly after that, Shivratan Verma, I think 4 or 5 years later. So my grandfather, as a 5-year-old, was then brought by his grandmother, whom we call Ammaji, to Jalandhar. And she became the warden of the girls' college there, which was this whole Arya Samaj thing. And the principal there was also a gentleman with the same surname, Verma. And my grandfather's main playmate was the principal's daughter, Saraswati,
okay,
who was around the same age. She's my mom's mother now. Okay, so she became my nanny later. Well, of course, this just was pure coincidence. Though it's a joke, that we grow up, our children will marry and all. So then my grandfather was there, and my Amaji felt that it wasn't correct, the right environment for a little boy to grow up in a girl's environment, because he was sort of spoiled silly by everybody. So he was sent off to Gurukul Kangadi in Haridwar,
okay,
where he performed amazingly well, so I'm told. And he sat for the ICS exam, and he cracked it in the first go. And now he had to go to England for that 1 year training or whatever it was. But Ammaji he was the only thing he had was Ammaji. He was mother, father, aunt, everything to her.
everything.
And likewise. So he said, I'm not going.
Hmm.
So he had an option of opting for the Indian Provisional Service. ICS people were generally, in Calcutta, Delhi, this kind of a thing. But Provisional Service was where you actually were in the provinces. And because of his own grandfather's links, he opted for the CP and Barar cadre.
Okay,
Now, as luck had it, my grandmother, she was from Nairobi. They had built a railway line there, her family, etc. In fact, one of her brothers is a very famous uh, writer who had written a lot of screenplays for Indian movies and all that. So she came. She was quite a star in Jalandhar. So my Jamaji, they got married. Then they had 4 kids. My two buas were mine. Uh, the eldest one was married to the first school captain of Dul School.
Okay.
He was in the army, Madhusudan Seth. And the second one married an Air Force fighter pilot, Dolly Yadav, from a very famous Air Force family. My father joined the Rajput regiment. His younger brother joined the Rajput regiment. So everybody went into the army. The 2 girls were homeschooled, but my dad was born in Chandrapur, and my chacha was born in Jabalpur, like that. But these boys were then, after a while, sent to Nainital because my granddad was involved with the first Prime Minister or Wazir-e-Azam of the United Provinces, which was Pant Sahib. And he had started the Birla Mandir school, Vidya Mandir.
Birla Vidya Mandir.
So the boys went there. My dad was the first school captain of BVM. And then he went to NDA, that time JSW. Dehradun mein tha, wahan se IMA. He got commissioned in 56, went into the army, and got commissioned into 2 Rajput, Kali Chindi, which was at Ramkachu in 62, as you know. And that's how it all started. So that also, even then he got married to my mother. And it so happened that my nanny was the same 5-year-old girl who used to play with my grandfather over there. So, in fact, my autobiography, Hindustani, the subtitle is 6 Degrees of Separation, because everything seems to go around in circles and then come back. So, yes, Kashmir it's in my DNA, obviously. And then my dad later, subsequently, he even commanded a brigade in Kyari, in Ladakh. We were literally living on the Indus. And I was in Tiger Tops at that time. So, in fact, first year our office was in Idus Hotel in Srinagar, right next to Broadway. Sheikh Saab was, his residence was also there. It was an incredible period. My boss was John Wakefield, whose uncle had been the Prime Minister of Kashmir. Second year, we shifted from Nidus Hotel. We bought a houseboat called the Star of Zanzibar, which I believe was owned by slave traders earlier. रात को बड़ी अजीब आवाजें आती थी कभी कभी. My own house was near Nishad Garden. So Kashmir was heavenly. And my job was opening up trekking routes between Kashmir and Ladakh at that time. So in fact, I crossed Umasila in 1981 for the first time. And there was this whole myth that anybody who crosses Umasila will die. Because Zorawar himself had lost about
he lost
30,
most of his
30
army.
or 40 people and 300 guys on another occasion. Now, if you see the Umasila Pass, is very exciting. Interesting. You get up from the Machel side. You get to a tholi on the Chenab, then you climb up. Machel ke baad, it's a flat kind of a valley. All valleys are flat. And you have hanging glaciers. And area is covered with edelweiss and is known as the Valley of Pregnant Horses. क्योंकि जो गुजर है ना, ये जितने भी यहाँ से अपने होशियारपुर और ये जो एरिया है, वो अपने घोड़े वहाँ लेके आते हैं, the female mares, and they'll put a donkey in between. You know that mules can't reproduce. So you got the wild west kind of a scenario with the hair flying and the horses thundering and the glaciers cracking and all that. So it takes about a day to get to the base of Umasila, which is also called Padamla. And if you go up from this side, you come to a cliff. Is known as the Rewa. So you have to camp there because शाम को दोपहर को बहुत जोर से हवा आती है, 150-200 miles per hour. And you can blow you off the. So you have to stay there. So we actually had a big problem crossing because porters won't go. घोड़े तो हमारे सिर्फ ये वैली तक जा सकते थे. We had to take porters from Machil. They said we'll come up till the pass, but you get the Buddhist guys to come from that side. And then there's almost a kilometer long snowfield in between, full of crevasses, So early morning you set off when the wind is not there and then you cross. So actually I did this in 81. And in fact, when I got across on the other side, that's when I got those maps on Siachen, which started the whole conflict in a way. It contributed to the start of the conflict. And I spent that wonderful 2.5 years doing this kind of work. So I also got to know and explore Ladakh in a different way. At the same time, my father was commanding the brigade there, so I had the best of both worlds. And then later he commanded the division in Jammu. He was the DOC of 26th Infantry Division. So well, life's been very kind, and then of course I became, I got involved with Associated Press and this, that, and the other. Shot a few films later for Bittu Segal when we did these wildlife films in Ladakh, etc. And then of course the Air Force films happened in 1991, 92. We shot Salt of the Earth. So one got a tremendous aerial view of the whole thing. We were flying fighters, we were flying helicopters. I mean, I was the only civilian who had almost, I think I've flown over 300 fighter sorties. And out of which at least maybe, about 10 to 20% were in Kashmir. MiG-21s, Mirages, Jaguars, you name it. Yeah. So on IL-76, you can nose mein camera laga ke niche shoot kar rahe hain. So one was from Siachen to DBO to there in the corner of Kashmir one wasn't exposed to. And all that came in very handy because when I wrote the 1962 book, half the battle is in the Ladakh side.
Yes. It happened in Kargil, which
Kargil was much later. Kargil was of course later. When the Kargil War happened, I was in Kulu, where I now live also. We have a house there. And I felt that I had done a lot of filming with the Air Force and all that before that. So I offered. I said, there was all those restrictions about not going 10 kilometers and that. And you know that in the air you can't. There's no way you have a boundary.
There are no boundaries there.
So we decided that I said, I'll fly with you guys and let's film visual targets so that when pilots see this, they'll have, it's like a simulator kind of a run. So they gave me it took a while. They gave me an honorary rank. And I was supposed to go up. And last minute that was cancelled because the chief felt that we had already lost 2 aircraft on that helicopter. And he felt that if you're going in on filming runs, they had shoulder-fired missiles and it was a big problem. Stingers were there. So that didn't happen. But then I went in on behalf. The army backed me. I was the only guy who was not paid to be in Kargil. So I went there, I shot this film. And I came back from Kargil, again, because I had helicopter support, everything, I could get to places where nobody could. For example, in Batalek, Vikramjit Singh of the Indian Express and me, we were the only 2 chaps who ever got there. If you see Brigadier Devinder's reports, after action reports, everything, his whole case, he starts by saying only 2 people made it there. He was making a point that journalists were easily able to go to Dras and all these areas, but nobody could come here. Hum logon ko,
and that's what happened. Most of them were actually in Dras.
Yeah, they were there.
Yeah, they were all.
But you see, the fighting happened over a very large area, and so one got fully involved in that. And then I made my film after the war, which was when the American delegation came here with Bill Clinton. This was the film which was screened. In fact, Mr. Jaswant Singh was the foreign minister and Mr. Jayant Dixit was the NSA. And my film was screened for Bill Clinton and actually had the pleasure of running it.
So that was basically the proof which then went to
we showed him the whole thing and we said, see, what I also did was, firstly, I did 2 things with my footage. If let's say CNN or BBC, because we were flying and shooting in areas where nobody had access. अब आप कितना दिखाओगे वो द्रास पंद्रास के पास guns firing
और मैक्सिमम लोगों को वही लगा कि वहीं पे जो है वो
so anybody wanted footage, I never said no. I said take it. And we had a very interesting agreement with the army. See, these guys didn't know me, right? So they would go to the army and say, give us some footage. And the army would say, we don't have any, go to Kunal, right? But I was an independent guy. So they would come to me. I remember, what was her name? She was with Time, Anita Pratap.
Ah, yes.
All these people. She wanted a film for Nagas. I take it. My only condition used to be that I want to see what you're reporting. If you're going to say Indian occupied Kashmir, bugger off. I'm not giving it to you. Okay. If you get your facts right. I want to see your reports. You want to use my footage? Now, if the government or the army had done this, people would have shouted censorship. Freedom of press. Here, they had no say. I was a private guy. You wanted the footage, you take it. If you don't want it, well, climb a tree.
Right.
So I controlled a lot of that. In fact, 1920 channels used the footage. And I think we really impacted the perception war at that time. I mean, whatever, perception kya, hum to sach bol rahe the ye. Then I also filmed all the POWs, the handing over of the bodies, all that was done. So we made a CD out of that, which was then shown to the Yanks. And, well, it was quite a period. Though I also say this, and I've said this on various platforms, wherever I've screened this film. Firstly, we did not restrict the film to just Kargil. We called it Baramulla to Kargil because in my opinion, even at that time, I felt looking only at Kargil would give a wrong impression. So we also had taken the earlier part. I had spent a few days with the Hizbul Mujahideen in 1995. I'd gone across and stuff. So I had all that footage with me. So we incorporated a lot of that into the film.
So perception war is what you said you tried to manage at that time, and pretty decent job. Yeah.
We didn't put any labels on it. I went because my country was at war. I felt I needed to go and I went. I offered to go. The government was great. They gave me the sanctions. They said, chalo. हमने जाके किया जो करना था, and everything came very naturally.
But sir, this was a time when there was no social media. It was largely these mainstream news
That is
channels
true.
and used to do. But with the advent of social media, this perception war or this information warfare, do you think we have learned our lessons from Kargil to how to manage, or do you think that we still don't completely comprehend what information warfare is, how it should be incorporated into the command structure of, when we are engaging with the enemy, not only during active times but also during the passive times?
See, Muni, basically, it's a evolving situation. There cannot be any templates for it, right? You have to prepare a body of people who understand what the armed forces are, who understand geopolitics, who understand what they're talking about. And I'm not talking about people who have just retired and suddenly want to be relevant and they come and say whatever they want. I'm not taking away from them. Their depth of knowledge is great. But you need specialists. And who are those specialists? Those specialists are basically journalists and people who are already in the media who specialize in something. Now, unfortunately, and I've been saying this for quite some time, that whatever happens, whether it is with China, whether it is with in the Northeast, whether it is with Bangladesh, whether it's with Sri Lanka, whether it's with Pakistan, any country, it is going to be a war of narratives. And what actually happens on the ground today is almost irrelevant in the larger picture, if you frankly ask me. Okay, you blew up a couple of your missiles hit a hangar, you blew up an aircraft here, you did this, you blew up the runway. These are replaceable things. Even the casualties, etc. This is not a cricket match. The human beings
True.
involved, even they have children. You don't want to just go on a rampage. What's the difference between you and Pakistan?
No, that is true.
So, having said that, it is very necessary to have a very informed public. We've tried to do that also in our own way. Like we had this whole military history seminar and all which we have brought into schools. It's all gone off the rails because of individual egos subsequently. But the fact is, we've been trying to do this. We've been trying to manage this whole perception. Now, when we started military history, for example, in this particular school in Dehradun, one of the former principals went on Facebook and he said, "What are you trying to do, Kunal? You're trying to create a military school and all that." I said, "No. In fact, all my books, all my films, everything are actually anti-war statements. I want people to understand what war is. This is not a bloody joke. It's not a cricket match. हमने 300 मार दिए उन्होंने 200 मारे. ऐसे नहीं होता भैया. Every life counts. You see a man die. You see a man shot. You've been a journalist in Kashmir. You've seen a lot of this, yeah. You see his bloody intestines lying on the road and this thing, and you see 1 minute the man is alive, he's laughing, he's talking, the next minute he's gone.
He's gone.
Right? So what the hell do you do? Now, we are facing a very, very difficult situation in Kashmir. I was very close to the TRC, the Tourist Reception Center, in 1989 when the first bomb went off. I was shooting a wildlife film there and I was having dinner with the chief wildlife warden or whatever, I'm forgetting who it was. The whole place shook. And that time I looked at my wife and I said, "Oh my God, this is the beginning of something." And Optopack actually happened. It was, and after that, you know what the story is. It's been crazy.
It is.
Kargil was an outcome of all that. In fact, one kind of almost predicted what was going to happen in Kargil. I'll take a moment and tell you that story. I wanted to make a film called An Airfield Called Gilgit. That was the working title of the film. If you follow geopolitics, you'll know what the hell I'm talking about. It was all about, it starts with the Great Game. It talks about the British and Russian interests, etc. And then after independence, how the Americans replaced the British and how the Chinese also come into play. The whole thing was the Americans wanted a platform. They were the British, how Pakistan was created. In my long road to Siachen, you read that book.
Yes.
I talk about the fact that the first plan to draw up Pakistan was in 1919 by this British officer in the colonial office. And the book came out in 2010. This whole thing is given.
Yes.
It was supposed to be Hindustan, Pakistan, Princestan. हमारा इतिहास बोलता है कि 1932 में जाके पाकिस्तान को पहली बारी मुस्लिम लीग ने बोला था. This was drawn up then. And there was a footnote attached to it. It said, Princestan is not practical, but we will use this as a leverage to get the Congress to agree to Pakistan. And Pakistan is BIG, big, which is what? British something interest. Sorry, not BIG, the British interest in the long run.
BIL, basically.
Yeah. So, and this is exactly what they did.
Brother-in-law.
Yeah. And the funny thing was that I also gave the example of how Jinnah, when he went back from India in 1930s, had actually given up. He had got sick of Indian politics after they insulted his wife and all that. He went there, and then Churchill recruited him. Now, when the book came out, I really thought that journalists and all will latch on to this, that, okay, here's the original plan on Pakistan. I'd got the original documents in NDC and all that. There's been quite a lot said about it. And nobody seemed to notice it, yeah. The Vice Chancellor of the Karachi University that time ratified what I said about Jinnah being recruited. His handler was Churchill's secretary. Her name was Judith or Janet or something like that. He was reporting to her. It was Churchill who hammered in the concept of Pakistan. And Kashmir was supposed to be the cherry on the damn thing. All the maps around Kashmir, everything had disappeared from army headquarters before the whole thing happened. And Jinnah's classic remark, moth-eaten Pakistan without... Then he got, you know how things folded out. He got impatient.
He went in.
What they called Lashkar actually was nothing but terrorism.
No, even Akbar Khan, who wrote the doctrine on this, he accepts that he sent the soldiers.
Exactly.
It's written clearly in his book.
This has been the whole thing and then right from its very inception, Pakistan has played this game of deniability. Take the action, do whatever you have to do, but then say, who, me? नहीं, मैंने तो कुछ नहीं किया. Prove it. अब आप उसको prove ही करते रहते हो. And ये जो war of narratives में भी जो अभी हुआ है, they've done exactly the same thing.
It was expected textbook था उनका sir.
The day Pahalgam happened, I think 22nd?
24th.
A few days later, I think the very next Sunday, I wrote a piece which was published in the Sunday Guardian where I said, hold a mirror to Pakistan. I said the biggest mistake Munir has made is that he's actually, in that speech he's made to those
16th of April speech.
16th of April speech to all these all these
Pakistani expats.
He has actually come over ground. And he's actually talked about indirectly Kashmir, jugular, wo jo bhi bol gaya, he made himself. And Pahalgam is a direct result of what has happened.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, it's like giving, aag mein aap wo laga rahe ho. Declare him a war criminal. You read that article, it's there. Declare him a war criminal immediately. Because the blood of those 26 people is on his hand. And I had suggested that, like we did in Kargil, we had blockaded Karachi unofficially. We'll place submarines in the area, we let people know. We did that.
But I don't think many people know about
that. The day we did that, Sushil Isaacs was the chief, the naval chief that time. And I remember talking to him because I was making the movie at that time. And he said, he used to be very close to me. He used to talk to me a lot. He said, look, Air Force, we have a 1.5 to 1 parity, right? But with China involved, even that is actually 1:1. Army also boots on the ground wala scenario 1:1 hi hai. Zyada se zyada thoda, we may have more depth and all that kind of stuff. Basically, it's the same. He said the Navy at that time, in 1999, he said, I've got an 8:1 advantage. So what he did was, he positioned a few subs in the area. The day we started to do this, and Karachi Harbour has a problem because it's a very narrow
it's a narrow strait
approach,
coming in.
Right?
Yes.
Now, the moment they did that, Nawaz Sharif was on the flight to bloody Washington. He was sitting in Bill Clinton's lap and saying, Mujhe bachao.
So Nawaz Sharif in 1999, 26 years later, Shahbaz Sharif in power. Pakistan does it again. And they have done it multiple times.
And everything was planned meticulously.
Then was it an intelligence failure from our side?
Of course it was. I mean, now, again, I've been saying this, and I've said it on various platforms. India is surrounded by enemies. Your natural position as the main littoral state in the Indian Ocean, the fact that you've got this whole geopolitical scenario unfolding in every direction, and you were not in control of your own destiny till 1947. So a lot of these are legacy issues, which go back to almost every problem in the world. It goes back to the British.
It goes back. Yes.
Okay, so that is an accepted fact. Partition देख लीजिए आप. Partition में what happened? About 1 million people were killed. 4 million were displaced.
Yes.
The Hindu, Muslim, Sikh divide. The Hindus and Sikhs and the Muslims on one side. The butchery was at an unimaginable level. Now, what the British had played the whole game, British interest group, that's why big. Okay. So the British interest group was basically looking at creating a platform for themselves because they had their eyes on the oil fields of Iran, or Bahrain was the main refinery at that time, right? And Iraq, all this. So they needed this platform. They had managed to get it. To hold on to that, now the hatred which got created between the two sides, between Hindus and Muslims and everything, and then also allowed the Pakistanis to keep playing the Indian Muslim card also for years, became the issue. Nobody was looking at the BIG.
Yeah.
So that now you have the bloody tail wagging the dog here. अब उसके बाद तो फिर शुरू हो गया. फिर 47-48 में इन्होंने जब कश्मीर में आए, जो वहाँ पे लूट और रेप और ये सब किया है बारामुल्ला वगैरह में, लोग सब भूल गए. और ये हमारी सबसे बड़ी गलती थी that in the initial period, right up till I would say the 2000s, we never talked about all this.
No, we don't.
Pakistan kept hammering away at it, and they kept hammering away at it, and they were telling lies. We had truth on our side. We never said anything.
And
UN resolution, nobody talked about it.
Nobody talked about it.
Point 1, 2, 3. First thing is get the hell out of Kashmir, then we'll talk. वो point number 4 लेके बैठे हैं.
Sir, इतना बुरा हाल था, and I'll tell you from my own experience. I remember till about 2008, 2009, when I would have discussions with normal people in Kashmir, and they would say, UN resolution में लिखा है कि आज़ादी हमको चाहिए. And I used to say, UN resolution में आज़ादी का आपके पास कोई option नहीं है.
अब पढ़िए तो सही.
They used to be shell shocked because Pakistan had sold so many lies from 1947 till about, I would say, 2008, 2000, even till about 2016, 17. I would actually
even 2025, what is different?
Now at least there is a counter.
They've
Now
got to a
people know
different
the other
level
story.
now.
So I call it a single story syndrome, which everybody was in that region was suffering from. That you just listen to the one side of the story and you believed everything was true. But what baffles me is, despite understanding all this, why were we not able to tell the truth to our own people and to the world as well? What stopped us from doing that?
My dad used to have a very interesting theory about this. He used to say that Christians and Muslims bury their dead.
Mm-hmm.
So man dies, but his remains are there. You still know that he's there. Hindus में हम लोगों में क्या होता है, हम जला देते हैं, खत्म हो जाता है, आत्मा चली गई, रीबर्थ वगैरह वो सब बोलते रहो, पर कोई एशेज भी नदी में डाल दी, बात खत्म हो गई. So history in the Hindu mind has been it's been something like cremation. Gaya ho gaya, khatam. Get on with your life. And actually, India has had all kinds of problems. I mean, I remember when I grew up, if you had a transistor in your house, you were considered to be a affluent family.
Yes.
एक टाइम था, one day in a week you were not allowed to have dinner because there was not enough rice for the whole country. I mean, we grew up in that environment. We were in the army. My dad was in the army and all. We were insulated from a lot of this, but the poverty, the kind of this thing was phenomenal. I think India is struggling to come to grips with itself. They didn't have time to sit and look at what had actually happened, what the history was. And Kashmir was something which was a distant thing which was happening for most people.
Just like Northeast.
Northeast, we talk about the isolation of the Northeast. I say the isolation of Kashmir was as bad. The isolation of Tamil Nadu is as bad. In this country, the problem is now we have started relating to it. And to a great extent, I would actually bring cricket into it, because the first time people started waving the flags, etc., was 1983, when we won the World Cup.
Yes, they dug up the pitch in Kashmir.
Otherwise, what was India? It was a different way. Five blind men looking at the elephant. Koi bolta rassi hai, koi bolta trunk hai, koi bolta tang hai. So, a chap growing up in Trivandrum, has very little knowledge. I won't say interest, because interest तो तब आएगा ना अगर
जब वो
knowledge होगी.
निकलेगा, एक्सपोजर होगा.
उसको बेचारे को क्या पता नागालैंड में क्या हो रहा है, नागा को क्या मालूम कि कश्मीर में क्या हो रहा है, गढ़वाली को क्या मालूम कि भोपाल में क्या हो रहा है. So we've grown up in these little isolated patches which make up the whole. Gradually that whole has started taking shape. It's a wonderful achievement that this country is held together. The amount of people who try to break it up, the amount of nonsense which has happened, and a lot of that internal pressure, the 2.5 front में जो half front की हम बात करते हैं, which we talked of in Kashmir, this is it. And this is what we have to realize. Beyond a point, in my opinion, Pakistan is a sideshow. China is a sideshow. We have to get this whole concept. I keep harping, whether I'm talking at colleges or schools or wherever, of Fortress India. Fortress India, the day we begin to realize what Fortress India is. For Fortress India, you must understand geography. You must understand military geography. You must understand military history. These three things have to come into play. Yeah, here's the catch. There is no such thing as military geography.
Yeah.
It is geography, right?
It is geography.
So unless you know your country backwards, tell me one thing here. I ask you today, name the major mountain ranges in India. आप क्या बोलोगे?
नहीं सर, हिमालय.
आप बोलोगे हिमालयस है, वेस्टर्न घाट्स है, ईस्टर्न घाट्स है, चलो चलो अरावलीज है, विंध्या.
यस.
अरे भैया, पूरा नागा पटकाई किसी ने सुना है? नहीं. मेघालय के जो हिल्स है किसी ने सुना है? नहीं. इधर के आपको which is your river system, how does the water flow, what is happening? You have to start looking at the country as your country. And there's the whole concept of Fortress India. What happens in Tripura? What happens in the most obscure corner of Mizoram near say Saya or Longtalai is going to impact you as much as what's happening in Ladakh.
And sadly, that is not still happening with us.
But gradually, it is for people like you, me, and other people to now try and bring this home. I did the Northeast trilogy with this as the motivating factor, introducing India to Indians. We've been working on this, but unfortunately we've not been able to somehow, like we just brought out Yoddha, the illustrated military history of India. Everybody who's seen it says it's out of this world, it's fantastic, but my job as a writer is that I'm a writer. Beyond a point, मुझे marketing वगैरह से इतना मतलब नहीं है. And it's very difficult to go onto a stage and say, "Bhaiya, meri kitab hai, khareed lo." You feel
it's
like
not
a
easy.
Dukandar there.
Most of the writers are not marketers anyways.
Like for example, 62 book. When I wrote it, I used to keep telling my family, my wife in particular, I used to cry every night. It was such a depressing book. I said, I'm writing this book. I wrote it mainly for my father because he's from two Rajput. We had all this thing, and I felt this story has to be bloody well told. And I used to tell her, I was so damn depressed. It takes me about a year to write a book, okay? It's not easy. And 62 actually ruined my life because I was in a state of constant depression when I was writing this. And I used to tell her, I used to say, listen, I've shot the Kargil War. I've come back from there. At least there we had a flag to show at the end of it. We, Chardi, Chal and, ye wo. Yahan pe kya hai? It's a black hole. Ye kitab kaun padhega? Nobody will read this book here.
And nobody on China or anywhere.
There was nothing.
There was nothing.
And there were a few books which were good in their own way, but they were telling their own story.
No, but very less.
And there also, a lot of critics say they were self-exonerating. So maybe they were. I don't want to comment at that level because they also have. Nobody's telling you a lie. Everybody's telling you his perception of the whole thing.
Yeah, their side of the story.
And having shot the Kargil War, I learned one very major lesson. 3 people go into action. Me, this plant, and you. All 3 of us have a different story.
Today. Yes, we see differently.
Our perceptions are heightened in warfare because you don't know whether you're going to be alive or dead in the next 1 second. So you see things very differently. The only thing common in what you write and what I write and even this little plant writes will be that the date, the time, the venue.
The venue.
After that, it's a different story. So as a military historian, how the hell do you weave that together? And yet, look what happened to the 1962 book. It really took off. And it also allowed me the platform to get into the school system with this whole thing because I'll tell you, when the book came out, it was published by Alum, by David Devida, which is a big thing because for the first time, a mainstream publisher was publishing a military book in the true sense. Otherwise, it was Lancer Press, Natraj, these guys who were known for this. ये किताब आई है बाहर. There was, I told David in the beginning, I said, you watch what happens. I said, you will get major reviews of this book because this book is too damn important. By that time, I knew what the book contained because I had written it. He told me, don't teach your grandmother how to suck eggs. He said, you get in India Today or Outlook or anything, if you get a column with a thumbnail of your book, be grateful. Because so many hundreds and thousands of books are published in a year.
True.
I got 5 pages in Outlook. I got 5 pages in the week. I got 5 pages in G5. I mean, the book was all over the place. It came in with a dhamaka. It was available, suddenly visible here, everything. People were suddenly looking at it. Now, that is the time. There was a very interesting guy called Derek Mountfort. He was the principal in Assam Valley School when I had done the Northeast trilogy earlier.
Okay.
He was the one who, he asked me to come to Tezpur. And he asked me to address the kids on the Northeast. And I remember telling him, I said, Derek, come on, these are Northeastern kids. What the hell do you want me to talk to them? He said, no, sir. They're from different valleys. Exactly what you are saying. What I had been propagating. He said, give them the overall picture. And he gave me a 2-hour slot. And I had a heart attack. I said, are you mad?
For 2 hours?
And from class 6 to 12, to सबको बिठा रहे हो वहाँ पे, मैं 2 घंटे के लिए क्या करूँगा? Luckily, I was carrying my laptop and I had all the photographs of Northeast trilogy. So I made a PowerPoint presentation of the whole thing. 2 hours. And I was watching the kids like a hawk. I said, one of them yawns, one of them gets fidgety, I will immediately wrap it up. I'll say, okay, thank you, you had enough, you're tired, go. 2 ghanta they sat through the whole thing. And he started this whole thing. He said, we will pick up copies for each and every child. And that, Assam Valley ordered. Now, he had moved out of Assam Valley School and he was now in Goenka schools in Delhi when 62 came out.
Okay.
Now, there's a gap of 3 years between the two stories I'm telling. He asked me to come and speak to the Goenka schools on 62. And I, much to my shame, I also had preconceived ideas. I said, yeah, Goenka schools, they're from business families mainly. They're basically Marwadi children. Wonderful kids. But the fact is, they're not interested in military history. Indians are not interested in military history. By and large, which section of society are you talking about? They'll have no interest at all. He said, no, you come. So I went. And there I see a lot of buses.
Okay.
Goenka school, Sonipat, Goenka school, Faridabad, Goenka school. So about 30-40 schools की buses and सारे class 10 के history students को उन्होंने इकट्ठा किया हुआ था. So when I walked in, there was a crowd of almost 1,000 kids, maybe more. I don't know. And I don't like talking to a very large crowd. I prefer 200, 300 people. That's more manageable. So as I went on the stage, Derek told me, okay, sir, you got 45 minutes. And I had made a small PowerPoint. He said, I have 45 minutes. Don't exceed that because the buses have to go on.
Okay.
Teachers were sitting in the front row, by and large, children, see your faces. I'm pretty good at this. 45 minutes means 45 minutes. So I finished in 45 minutes. And then Q&A was 15 minutes. Now there was a boy in a wheelchair sitting ahead of the right next to the stage. He asked for the mic. And he said, I am going to stand and ask this question as a tribute to the dead, to the fallen. मुझे खड़ा नहीं हुआ गया. बहुत कोशिश की उसने. वो क्या क्वेश्चन पूछा था, I forgot.
That is so touching.
But that, 15 minutes, 1 hour, 15 minutes later, they had to forcibly end that whole session. They were not willing to go here. It dawned on me then how wrong we were. We are presuming children don't want to read. They only want to see pornography on this thing. They don't.
They want to read Instagram.
I say we are not giving them material to read. What if we give them material to read? What if we actually give them stuff which is really world class? There's no point putting into schools, Chintu climbed a tree, or took a coconut and threw it at Pintu and all. I mean, that kind of, most of your stuff is actually quite puerile. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not under.
No, you are right, sir.
I'm not undermining children writers. Some of them are very good, but that stuff is not making it into the mainstream of where it should get to. Here's 62, a book which is a terrible defeat, a story of a terrible defeat. And shortly after that, there was a literary festival in the Dune School in Dehradun, and I was the chief guest, being an ex-DOSCO, whatever. And those boys had a budget to buy books. And I found all of them were buying Long Road to Siachen in 1962. मैंने एक लोगों को बुलाया हुआ यार देखो, don't just buy it because I'm here. No sir, we want to read it and all that. Okay, ठीक है. A year later, I was on a flight to Dehradun where I saw a school boy. You see the uniform. So I said, well, come on, we'll give you a lift home. We'll drop you at Dehradun, तो 1500 रुपए बच जाएंगे airport से. He was very, but unfortunately the गाड़ी we were in, there was a lot of baggage, वो पीछे बैठा हुआ था.
Okay.
So he says, sir, aren't you so and so? Didn't you come and talk to us about that literary festival about 1962? And I said, yeah. He said, sir, I've read your book not once, I've read it 4 times. And do you know, sir, that there was a mutiny in school? All the history students went and said, we don't want to learn history the way it's being taught. We need to do it this way. Of course, our systems being what they are, but it was a hell of a interesting point of view that we got. That's what actually got us going on this military history seminar. We started bringing in schools from all over India. We had, in the last one that I conducted was in 2023. I conducted it along with the teacher in charge, Sana Durrani, and that year we had close to 40 schools.
Wow.
40 schools. We had two governors who came as chief guests. The governor of Uttarakhand in the opening, and the closing was the governor of Arunachal, who came all the way. It just reached a level which was absolutely fantastic. Then, of course, for personal reasons, things have gone off the rails, and they are still carrying it on, and whatever they're doing. But you see, that's the whole problem. We become like crabs in a basket. कुछ भी वो चलने लगता है, उसको लेके वापस खींचो. So it's a bizarre scenario because I'm not the only guy. There are lots of people trying to do these hundreds of little things. We need to bring them under one umbrella. We've got to start. My whole thing is Fortress India. Focus on institutional integrity. Make people understand what the hell all this is all about. Institutional integrity is what is going to save this country eventually. If your police is doing its job, if your army is doing its job, if everybody is doing their job, then Pahalgams will not happen. Yeah. What the hell were you doing? How did this happen? Especially after the speech made by the Pakistani chief.
Yeah,
this was waiting. I remember talking to you in Srinagar.
In November, yes.
This was in December.
Yes, December. Sorry.
December, right?
December.
And I remember both of us. I think it's on Sangam Talks now.
Yes, it is.
People can Google that. When we both talked about it, we said it's a matter of time before something's going to happen in Kashmir.
Yes.
Right? And I also remember saying this. One shot and the whole thing now becomes a completely different story.
It has become a completely different story.
It has.
Yes.
We've slid right back because this war of narratives, Pakistan has understood this game. Because they've been playing it since 1947-48, yeah. हम सोचते हैं बड़े तीर हैं, हम बड़े शेर हैं, हम उनको जितना ज़्यादा चिल्लाएंगे वो सारे काउ डाउन हो जाएंगे. The world has its own interest in this whole game. The people who are involved in what is actually happening, it is not what on the face of it, what it seems, it's very different. Yeah. Geopolitics is like that.
But do you think Pakistan was expecting the response of Operation Sindoor, the kind of response we gave them this time?
I think they did. Because after Balakot, the Indian leadership, and I'm really glad they did it, because until then we've been like bloody meek lambs, yeah. But again, it becomes a question of optics. Now, once you've taken a certain stand that if you do this, I will strike back, it's then expected of you. And that is why when this Pahalgam killings have happened, I wrote that piece in Sunday Guardian saying, hold a mirror to Pakistan. I made 2 basic suggestions, drawing on my own experience of what had happened in Kargil. I had said 2 things. I said, the Pakistani army chief, label him a war criminal today. For the first time, they are not in a deniability mode. They are actually in a they have tacitly admitted they are behind it. Okay, so now you declare him a war criminal. Immediately declare him a war criminal. And the second thing is bring the Navy into play. Put pressure on them on the entire border. Keep the Army, Navy. Don't get involved in a shooting match. In fact, I've given the example of a tactical platoon commander. I said, you got to attack an objective. The enemy is very well entrenched. You don't want to unnecessarily go in there and have collateral damage, etc. So you have your hands tied to a great extent. How are you going to do it? Because daba ke rakho. Put out your jitter parties. The jitter party goes out at night, fires one burst,
Comes back.
30 rounds, comes back. That guy will fire 1 lakh rounds in the dark in every direction. Keep doing that. Pakistan was in a very different position a month ago. Let the pressure build up. Keep absolute radio silence on your side. Radio silence means you play Chitrahar music on every channel. Yeah, let them dance and watch the fun. It's not fun actually, because even Pakistan crumbling is not really something there's a lot of human element there as well. But that country has been running on an anti-India stance, using the Kashmir card to fan the embers. So many thousands have died. They themselves will implode. And the other point I have made in not only that article, but in the subsequent 2 articles, also in Sunday Guardian, I have said, do not make the mistake of imagining that the Pakistani economy actually reflects the state of the Pakistani army.
No,
it's a completely different animal.
Yes. Yes.
And once the shooting starts, you have to be very careful with this war of narratives, because Pakistan will have an edge over you.
Yeah, because sir,
they've always told lies. उनको क्या
they
फर्क
have
पड़ता
told lies. वो तो अभी भी आप देखो कि पाकिस्तान में लिटरली नंगे नाच रहे हैं कि हम तो जीत गए और हमने पता नहीं क्या अचीव कर लिया. You know.
But देखो,
so how do you fight a war of narratives with a liar?
The biggest positive which came out for me was the fact that for first time after the Pahalgam killings, the wave of abhorred reaction across the board was ये क्या हो गया, ये हुआ है, गलत हुआ है. For once, Pakistan was in the doggy house. But there are a lot of people within India who will fan this whole thing. Even that lady whose husband was killed, when she spoke like that, what is the point?
They don't understand.
What are you guys trying to do here?
She was in shock. Whatever.
So that's what I mean. You have to educate people. People have to, this military history, geopolitics, what is happening, these are key life subjects. These are not optional things which you can pick up. Just as environmental studies today is not an optional subject. Your earth is burning under your feet, and if you don't know what the hell is going on, I mean, there are certain things which are now becoming critical. And I think it is absolutely incumbent on the people in part who wake up to this. And for God's sake, get your institutional integrity into place. Cut out this corruption, yeah. Today, everything has a price tag. Everything has a price tag. You have money, you can murder a man and nobody will send you to jail. You don't have money, you can become a victim and every door will close on you.
No, that's true, because that is how largely the system
and then you say that your terrorists are being created. Obviously, they'll get created, yeah. Terrorists are generally created because of what?
Narrative.
A narrative. And generally injustices that injustice
victimization stories.
शुरू हो जाएगा.
वो तो वैसे ही था कश्मीर में, हमेशा से victimization.
कश्मीर में तो वैसे ही कि क्या करूं जनाब, उसके हाथ में बंदूक है, क्या करूं जनाब, मैं तो कश्मीरी हूं, मेरे को जूते ही पड़ ले.
मेरे को तो कुछ नहीं, मैं कुछ नहीं कर सकता.
लोग मुझे ये पूछते थे. I covered Punjab also during the 80s. They used to ask me this question. What is the difference between terrorism and the situation in Kashmir and the situation in Punjab? My answer, a lot of people won't like it. I think I said this in Kashmir also. I said it, 90% it was always money, it was power, it was women. In Punjab, if you wanted the woman, you had to shoot the guy with the father, the brother, whatever, usko marna zaruri tha, then they got the woman. And even then she would fight, she would also fight. In Kashmir, there was a kind of a passive this thing, कि चलो यार जिहाद लड़ रहा है तो चलो हमारी बीबी ले गया, हमारी माँ ले गया, हमारी बेटी ले गया,
कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. That is true.
This is the problem.
There are so many untold stories of rape, of kidnapping
I
of women in
them.
Kashmir.
I spent 5 days with these guys, yeah. That footage was shown to all the ambassadors, and General Roy Chaudhary was the chief that time. I came back, 5 days. I've actually spent a day inside a hut, inside the floorboard with the army patrolling on top with bayonets bloody checking the thing, yeah. अगर पकड़ लिया होता तो मुझे भी मार देते कि आप हो कौन. I had a AP card, Associated Press card, and that was used, and then there was a chap on their side who was one of the leaders who was wanting to surrender to us. So before he crossed over, he facilitated my move. He was the only one who knew I was working with the army or whatever. And I wasn't actually working for the army. I was working because I needed a film on this. I was doing the history of the army. It was incredible stuff. I've seen it from so damn close. In fact, the biggest problem was how to come back into the Indian side.
That difficult.
Because there was no, घुसने को तो घुस गए यार.
यानी सर वापस आते वक्त तो nobody is, there is no friend
There
and
no-
foe
and
badge.
nobody,
You're
in
not
fact-
carrying any friend and foe badge.
In fact, it was very interesting. The day I crossed over, I spent the evening, the whole बारिश हो रही थी, बर्फ गिर रही थी. This I tell you the date. Yeah, it was around 31st. It was New Year's. It was of
December.
1995.
Oh.
Okay, and that year it had snowed like shit.
Yes.
It was all over the place. And I was to cross at night, 2 o'clock. संबल है वो.
संबल बांडीपुरा में.
तो वहाँ पे मेरे को बोला था कि आप वो माइलस्टोन पे आ जाना 2 बजे रात को.
Okay.
नो क्यूआरटी नथिंग, आपको गाड़ी छोड़ेगी वहाँ पे और वो लाइट्स भी नहीं ऑन करेगी, चली जाएगी. ठीक है. अब एक कर्नल साहब थे. I spoke to him अभी recently because I was trying to recap all this. I didn't want to get it wrong when I wrote it in the book. So हम गाड़ी में बैठे और पूरा afternoon and all we were drinking whiskey to stay warm and eating wild boar pickle. Okay. तो घड़ी मुझे बोले वो from the राजपूत रेजिमेंट, यार तू जा क्यों रहा है, मर जाएगा, हाउ विल यू कम बैक, ये वो, व्हाट विल आई टेल योर फादर, आई हैव टू स्टॉप यू. मैंने कहा देखो सर, एक और बारी बोलोगे एज इट इज आई वाज आल्सो टेरिफाइड, एक और बारी बोलोगे मैं नहीं जाऊंगा, सो जस्ट स्टॉप इट. सो व्हेन ही वेंट टू ड्रॉप मी, आई गॉट ऑफ एट द व्हीकल एट 2 o'clock in the morning and he drove off and he went about 10 yards and he put his brakes so that lights coming on, dazzling absolutely. Then he backed the vehicle, opened the glove compartment, took out a pistol, gave it to me with 2 magazines. Okay. And says, go down fighting. And it's a captured weapon, so अगर फेंकना पड़ेगा फेंक देना. वो घेर में डाली चला गया. और मैं एज इट मैंने फिरन पहना हुआ था, कैमरा बैटरी लगी हुई थी, कैमरा था, ट्राइपॉड था, पता नहीं क्या क्या था. And as it is, I'm a heavy guy. वो ऊपर से डाउन where to put this bloody pistol? Is the pistol loaded? अंधेरे में कुछ पता ही नहीं. तो उसमें खोल के उंगली डाली, उंगली में भी वो चटक से लग गई, तो started bloody bleeding and sucking that. 2 o'clock in the morning, nothing happened. Then finally these guys came at around 4, they put a bag on my head, they marched me out. It's all there in the book, okay. Well, finally they took the hood off. They were the same area. I could make, I've been sound वही थी. When they took the bag off, there was this guy, the commander, and he said कि I was introduced to him. इन्होंने आर्मी का 3 हेडशॉट किया है. अच्छा. और 82 औरतों का बलात्कार किया है. So that was introduction, like a very cabbage man. And he's sticking his hand out. He had that smallpox marks. He had hardly any teeth. He looked the most ugly man I've ever seen in my life. And I didn't want to shake his hand because I don't want to shake somebody's hand who shot somebody in the arm. And at the same time, I'm thinking if I don't shake his hand, then his next introduction will be हमने 3 आर्मी का हेडशॉट किया है, 82 औरतों का बलात्कार किया और एक जर्नलिस्ट को भी साथ में चेप दिया है. So it was a very strange thing. But we filmed all this stuff. Yeah. We brought it back. I got it back. It was, I kept telling the chief, I said, sir, इसको use करो ना. इसको use करो. जब हमने वो finally कारगिल की फिल्म बनाई, a lot of this footage was used. When they're going in a bus, where there was some inter-rivalry thing and all that. But you see, when somebody saw that footage and he's telling me, देखो वो औरत हंस रही थी. I said, she's terrified. वो दांत दिखा रही है, हंस रही है. नहीं उसको ऐसे दिखना चाहिए था. मैंने कहा कि क्या है, शाम बेनेगल शूटिंग कि भैया खिड़की में बैठ के लुक पेंसिल. When war is on, things happen at a completely different pace. You guys have a very different perception of what should be going on. Yeah. So, well, it's been like that. We've done what we could. Yeah. I mean, we are reporting. We are doing what we can. We say what we have to say. Rest. It's up to the country now. Whether it is Kashmir, whether it is the Northeast, whether it's other parts of this country, the danger is so real, it's not funny. And the only solution is to tighten up. And this revolution has to come from students.
But I want to ask you before I move to Northeast, sir, because I know threat is going to come from there. How do you sum up those 2-3 days of what happened between India and Pakistan? Do you think we should have taken the ceasefire, the request from the Pakistanis, or should we have hammered them for a couple of days more? See, because the psychological defeat was almost there in Pakistani public's mind. We just couldn't instill it properly for them to be defeated psychologically.
I don't think we could have gone any further than what we did.
Why is that?
In fact, I had tweeted saying that the media should get the heck out of this whole thing. And so when I was asked by, channels like Rajdeep and various people, I had said, no, I'm not coming. I'm not getting into the media circus. But the day on the 8th when the attack happened, when the drones started to come from Pakistan, Barkha, I had gone to sleep in Kulu. Barkha rang me up and said, can you come on? So I went. And one of the questions she asked me is there. It's on her Mojo thing. वो 4 घंटे में उसका. So she asked me, at some point she asked me, what do you think is going to happen? And I said, listen, we've got a 48-hour window. At the most 72. The ceasefire will be forced upon. Whatever you can do now, these guys are coming right now, the Indian Air Force and Army will retaliate later tonight. And you have another day. उसके ज़्यादा तुमको time नहीं मिलने वाला. Because the world will not allow this to go an inch further. And the players involved in this, and I also remember the next morning I was talking to somebody else, very senior journalist. I've got it on my WhatsApp. I told him, I said, now you watch. Pakistan is now back into the 1956 scenario, where the Americans will now restart arming them. The whole equation will now change all over again. Kashmir, they have managed to bring right into the center stage. Why? Because they have managed their narrative from the word go. This narrative was planned. Even the wreckage of Indian aircraft, the fake stuff that they were putting out, had been prepared in advance. They knew we are coming. Because we had said we are coming. I'm not saying that the External Affairs Minister had said, but our own statements, everything that yes, army has been given free hand, this, that, etc. Pakis knew that kuch na kuch to aayega. And they're past masters at it. Yeah, they've been weaving a false narrative for centuries. They had already got this narrative worked out. And they would have had plan A, plan B, plan C. If there was a naval attack, हम ये डालेंगे, अगर ये होगा तो ये होगा, ये होगा, ये होगा. उसके बाद it became what? It became Chinese equipment versus French equipment versus this, that. They've shot nothing down. Yeah, they're talking rubbish. But the fact is, बोल दो.
Now, then you defend, with narrative, it is like you set up the narrative and then when you go
let
to
them defend, now, वो बोलते रहेंगे.
Defend करो.
Our press briefings, everything, morally outstanding, beautifully handled. But initiative gone because we were reacting. We were slow.
Yeah.
We were always react. They set the pace. The guy who sets the pace in this war of narratives is the guy who's going to have the last laugh in anything.
I think they were also setting up the pace where this war was going, this limited war, by reacting the way they were reacting, and we were just reacting to their
They knew
actions.
that the US will step in.
Okay.
Whether the US actually told us anything, didn't tell us anything, I don't know. But the US actually listen, the whole world knows this. This is not a state secret. The United States is a very dangerous friend to have. And at the moment, they are looking at India, warming up, cozying up, whatever Trump's initial remarks, etc., because he sees us as a possible ally in the war against China. The biggest thing they are scared of is the RIAC, the Russia, India, China. अगर ये कभी इकट्ठे हो गए तो इनकी तो पूरी बैंड ही बच जाएगी ना. Putin has suggested this, I think, a decade ago. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, if this happens, you become a self-sustained thing. The whole thing becomes the whole power balance shifts. They can't afford that. What has also come out in this short engagement with Pakistan is that I think it's come as a shock to the West. The advancement that Indian technology has happened, the indigenous build-up.
They were not expecting.
They are not expecting it. And I think there's a big danger here now.
Okay.
Because you are no longer a client country for them in that sense. They're still going to sell you weapons, etc. But you are not entirely dependent on them, right? You become a threat to them.
You become
There's no love lost here.
No, there is no love.
We have this very fancy notion that because a lot of Indians are there and they are in this, and JD Vance's wife is an Indian and ye hai or Kamla
I call it all
ये सब
show
कोई meaning नहीं है. They always have to be their friend is worse than being their enemy.
That's what Henry Kissinger has actually said.
He
has said it. And
so many people have said it, not just him.
So what is this fascination about Americans and why, sir, now Bangladesh is opening up? It's a matter of days before I see some trouble brewing up in Bangladesh. The Islamists and the army is going to clash. It looks inevitable. And
see, when Sheikh Hasina came to India in 2017, a former DGMI, General Lumba, and myself, we were nominated to go there and follow up because she was making overtures to recognize what had happened in 71. We went on 3 trips. First time we went, we met the foreign minister. Second time he met the finance minister, and the third time he met the Mukti Jodha minister. 3 different trips. What struck me most was that post 1976, the history had been completely and absolutely wiped clean.
Okay.
Completely. After Mujib got assassinated, the narrative changed. 71, yes, they had fought a war of liberation. India का तो नाम ही नहीं है भैया. You go to their museum, there are 2 photographs. एक सरेंडर सेरेमनी की है और एक वो रेलवे का है, वो 3 डोगरास का है, वो पुशिंग नथिंग, उसमें भी there's no caption.
Okay.
It's a joke. We were sent to try and see if we could redo those museums. We can do a kind of a combined thing because the Prime Minister was talking a certain language. She was at that time also bringing a lot of war criminals to trial and stuff like that. All that was happening. Most of the killings, as you know, in Pakistan happened by the Razakars, not so much by the Pakistani army. They killed 1 million people, whereas the Razakars killed the other remaining 3 or whatever the figure was. It was very obvious that India doesn't, that Sheikh Hasina sooner or later is going to be in trouble. Even in her overtures toward India, she was being very careful. Now, there was a very fine officer who did the staff college course in Dhaka. He's a MiG-25 pilot, Johnson Sacco, retired as a group captain. So in his farewell speech at the staff college in Dhaka, he said, in fact, with him was General Narayanan, who been talking about all the nuclear aspects on TV.
Right?
Rajiv
Narayan, sir.
Major General Narayan. So these 2 officers were there. And Chako, when he made his speech, he said, I've been in Dhaka, or Bangladesh for a year. People are very warm, very hospitable. He said, I have met a whole cross-section of society, especially the army. He says 50% of the people I met were pro-China. 50% of the other was pro-Pakistan. I never met anybody who was pro-India. And I never met anybody who was pro-Bangladesh.
Okay.
He got into trouble over this speech because they put a diplomatic objection to it. Kya bol gaya?
No, but I think he spoke the truth.
But this is the underlying problem. And Bangladesh today has seen, they're not blind, they have seen how Pakistan has become a cat's paw. And Pakistan has played the game of the US and China so superbly, starting from the 50s. Ayub Khan se leke abhi tak. They have, you can call them, you can say they're prostituting themselves, you can say, yeah, whoa, whatever you want, but that does not matter. In the end, they are still getting weapons from both sides. They're doing this, they're doing that. They've become the cat's paw, the proxy, this thing for both, not just, we think they are cat's paw for China, I say they're also cat's paw for the United States. And now Bangladesh is harboring similar dreams. Because the next battleground that we are going to be facing, if you follow geopolitics, it's obvious, is Burma.
It's a matter of time.
It's Myanmar.
It's Myanmar, yes. And Myanmar is what I want to talk about. There's a lot of, talk that Myanmaris per se really like Indians.
They do.
They do. But despite them liking Indians, we really don't hold that much of a sway in the conflict in Myanmar of what is happening. Apart from what I would say is some understanding with the Arakan army.
See, again, there's very little understanding of Myanmar. Historically, everything's not been very rosy either. When they invaded Manipur and all that, they're known as the 7-year dark period. Myanmaris can be very equally brutal and bad.
Yes,
so there's been a very checkered kind of a relationship. I'll give you one example. When General V.K. Singh was the chief, he went to Myanmar. And the Myanmar army chief came to see him in the afternoon, not as part of the official protocol, this thing, but have a cup of tea. And he comes with an interpreter. He doesn't speak in English, he speaks in Burmese. So, and that interpreter, captain or whatever he was, he says, my general says that the people of Myanmar would much rather deal with the people of India than with the people of China. People meaning government or whatever. But unfortunately, my general says you're a NATO country. So General VK said, no, we are not a part of NATO. Pakistan is a signatory to CENTO, SEATO. You have to sincerely explained.
India has never been.
तो सुना चुपचाप, उसने translate किया वापस, फिर उसने एक sentence बोला, फिर कहता, no, my general insists you are NATO country. So फिर again we said, whatever, they went back and forth for a while.
Yeah.
Then when it was time for the general to go, he gets into his car and General Viket walked up to see him. And he speaks in English though.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, General, I know that I wasn't referring to North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I know you're not a part of that NATO. In Burma, NATO stands for No Action, Talk Only. थप्पड़ लगा के चलाए. I mean, sure. Now the problem is, India, because of our size, because of our own compulsions, everything, we have either taken things for granted, or we have been pretty ham-handed in our handling of things. That's the whole problem.
It's quite evident in Bangladesh also, because the way things went out of hand, and now we are at like, we should take the chicken neck and we should.
Listen, this kind of talk, now.
I want to know, sir.
This is absolutely ridiculous.
This is what
I've seen it on TV. Where
everybody is see when are we taking the chicken?
Former army officer saying, "हम गर्दन काट देंगे ये 3 दिन में लड़ाई 3 दिन क्या 3 घंटे में." तो दिमाग खराब है.
I want to know this, sir. This is very important for me.
Are you kidding? Which world are you living in? It's not that you can't physically do it. Maybe you can, but are you mad?
What are the repercussions of if you do something?
I mean, firstly, this chicken neck concept. Let's understand this, because this also came up during Doklam in a big way. Oh, the chicken neck is threatened. Chicken neck is a pretty wide area, yeah. It's 50-60 kilometers at its narrowest, right? You've got Meghalaya on one side, the Bhutan Hills on the other side. The fact is, it is there. The problem is we have lost all the old communication systems which are all running through Bangladesh, because that's again legacy issues because of partition, etc., etc. If there was anything where Mrs. Gandhi could have possibly brought her leverage in at that time, was, you see, in the old days also the trade used to go down the Kenpuli River from Mizoram to Chittagong.
Okay.
Wo abhi bhi jao aap, will see the old dockyards and the jetties and all that stuff. They're still there, of course, in a terrible state of repair. But after the 71 war, I think we should have got access to Cox's Bazar.
Which we never did.
Which we didn't even ask for. It never occurred to anyone.
No, we never occurred.
Right. Today, well, not today, about 10 years ago, there was this whole talk of Sitwe and, getting this whole thing going, and they built those highways in
and the
Mizoram and along the Caledon River, Caledon River, etc. But those are all non-starters, because now the Americans and the Chinese are also in a tussle there, because this is very, very naturally, I mean, the Irrawaddy basin, all this is full of
the critical mineral, the critical earth materials.
It's very vital.
Yeah, it's smuggling like anything.
The problem in Myanmar today is that you've got 10 different factions which are all fighting. Each one is completely on his own trip. The junta is on his own. They're controlling. What are they really controlling is also not very clear. Kachin Hills have never been with them, etc., etc. And the problem is that a lot of this spills into our territory also. What is happening on the other side it impacts us. And in between all this, you have that little tri-junction right at the bottom with where India, Bangladesh and Myanmar meet. And there you have all this Rohingya issues and all kinds of stuff. So it's a very, very... हमारा वहाँ पे ज़्यादा deployment and all that also has been... For example, the border with Myanmar has been open all these years. And
that is what I also feel, sir, that, I say that the threat from the east is far more bigger, because, with Pakistan, the infiltration is always under check. But from the east, the infiltration, I believe, has always happened.
Exactly. And in today's world, it takes you 2 hours to fly from the furthest airfield to Delhi. 2.5 hours maximum.
That's it.
So why crawl under tunnels and this, that, when you can happily come from the other side and then catch a flight and come?
And that has happened.
And weapons and all today are being dropped by drones. And, the whole warfare, everything is changing, and you have to stay abreast. But ये सब चलता रहेगा. We've got very competent leadership. Okay, let me tell you that much. I mean, our professional systems are such. We are not the same army of 62 or 65. The armed forces have become very evolved. And I think it is beginning to show in the defensive performance during this 4-day, we call it a war if you like.
Mm-hmm.
That is all okay. It is how are we handling the overall picture, and it again comes down to your war of narratives. And how inclusive do we remain? अभी लड़ाई हुई है, अभी सब उठ के हाँ जी, they will all say the right thing. But will they say the right thing 1 month down the line is the question.
True, because sir, कहाँ भी अभी भी है, you see certain section has
वही तो कह
already
रहा हूँ ना,
started.
पहले एक दिन में तो सब चुप थे, हाँ भारत माता की जय, सेकंड डे भारत माता, थर्ड डे भारत, फोर्थ डे व्हाट माता, व्हाट भारत, व्हाट दिस थिंग, दे स्टार्ट, and this there has to be a control on what is being said on the media. I think so. I really think so. There has to be checks and balances.
But
it
sir,
has to be worked out.
It's
a trap.
It's a trap both ways, because once you start putting up checks, where does it end? You don't want to empower the state so much. Then what's the difference between us, Pakistan,
no,
and
I'm
China?
I'm not talking about a blanket ban. No. I'm talking about like when there is a flare up, this 4-day thing happens. As a matter of national security, just shut up. Don't tell the other guy what you're doing, yaar. What are your options? आप पहले ही बोल रहे हो हम इधर से आएंगे, आप वॉर गेम्स कर रहे हो, अगर हम यहाँ से रॉकेट भेजेंगे, हम इधर से हवाई जहाज लेके आएंगे, हम इधर से ये करेंगे, हम इधर से उड़ा देंगे, क्या बकवास कर रहे हो यार?
नहीं, that is
you are not the guy in the hot seat, and why? And all you guys are talking like this, why? Because you want to stay relevant, yeah.
True.
And you're shouting louder because the other guy is shouting, so I want to shout even more than him.
And you're even getting the Pakistanis and shouting more. This is
and while we are on this subject, let me also say this: a lot of our people who are doing podcasts and things like that, they start off as very different individuals. वो थोड़ा सा वो recognition आ जाता है, वो celebrity status में आ जाते हैं, भैया I have so many followers, everybody listening to me. I mean,
self-importance.
It's a human tendency, but somebody has to regulate it. In the case of Pakistan, there is a whole think tank behind this.
Yes.
It's obvious.
It's an institution, sir. The ISPR, the whole ISPR is actually, trains you. And
हम लोग उस पे हंस रहे हैं, ये सही पाकिस्तानी आर्म्ड फोर्स, उसको लेके आप बड़े खुश हो रहे हैं, देखो गवार है, क्या फर्क पड़ता है यार, गवार भी वही हथियार मारेगा ना, आपको वही गोली आएगी उसी स्पीड से, वो चाहे आर्म्ड बोले या आर्म्ड बोले,
pronunciation,
the same thing.
You can make fun of
it. Don't underestimate your enemies, would be my final message. That don't underestimate it. Build on your strengths. Kashmir and Kashmiris have to see the game, which I think they are beginning to see now. This social media works both ways.
I am very scared.
They can also see what's happening. There's a bit of an overkill on Pakistan's side now. Which when you bribe everybody in a particular case, आप 2 बंदों को bribe करो, बहुत मुश्किल होता है प्रूव करने पर, अगर आप उसमें 10 लोग हैं, 10 को bribe कर दो, तो फिर obvious हो जाता है कि आप गड़बड़ कर रहे हो. Pakistan has overplayed its hand also to a great extent. The killings which have happened, the civilians who've been killed in Puch, their photographs should have been everywhere. Those twins who have died, this, that, etc.
We didn't talk about our civilian casualties.
We didn't even talk about them.
That 2-year-old kid, we didn't talk about.
I mean,
hardly a mention anywhere.
This is so tragic. And they used to never do that. They used to always fire at the peripheral villages, let the people come in here. And then this area you were safe. I've been in Punjab when they've been firing. In fact, in 1995, the same period, we were doing this enactments of the Punj siege. So हम लोग were bang and all that. We were blasting a few this thing, and we had the army. We were acting, and Punj is a bowl, so you can see it. And that day, the MLA, he had a heart attack. He was a huge guy, and so they couldn't even get him out in a Chetak. So we were told to stop blasting for a while because the helicopters were coming to evacuate him. So the Mi-17 came, landed, ambulances. There was a whole crowd around at the airport. उसको डाला, वो helicopter चला गया, गाड़ियाँ हट गई. हमारा फिर तमाशा शुरू हो गया. We had to finish our enactment. So GC slabs, धाड़ वाला. In the evening, we intercepted a lot of reports from sleeper cells on our side saying, taking credit for each and every dhamaka. So they were paid for it, you see. So somebody saying, मैंने वो कलवर्ट उड़ा दिया था, मैंने ये कर दिया था, मैंने वो कर दिया था, and giving their code names की. This is Charlie 42, मैंने ये किया, वो किया. And we were at the bar, and this radio, what they called Azad Kashmir or whatever.
Radio Pakistan Radio Kashmir.
ऐसी कुछ था. We were at the bar, I was having a whiskey. When this guy announced that Major Kunal Verma has been killed, I almost choked on my whiskey. अरे ये क्या हो गया? And क्या वो करते हैं, उर्दू में कि I don't know, I've forgotten what he said. It wasn't Shahid.
शहीद नहीं हो
नहीं,
गया.
Shahid नहीं था.
अच्छा,
कि
something
he's
else.
been killed, you know.
Okay.
Shahid तो you
हाँ.
only use it for your own. What the heck, yeah. Even my name that got. Because I was shooting that movie here. So that's on the lighter side. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That these guys, they don't miss a beat here.
No, sir. Even yesterday, if I was going through DG ISPR's press conference, they actually identified quite a few of our ex handles.
Yeah.
You know, and then saying, "Look at Colonel, ये Colonel रहना है, ये है, देखो कैसे झूठ बोल रहे हैं." I mean, I was zapped. Ki this is why are we not proactive in
And they're quoting a lot of WhatsApps. Like for example, I don't know what. I mean, with due respect, what Praveen Sani and
Praveen Shawnee,
and Ajay Shukla and all these people.
Oh,
I don't know what they every time they try to do because they just don't they realize what they're doing.
I think, sir, they're overtly playing the hand of being a lobbyist for a particular country. I that's what I believe, honestly. I don't know. Either they are too much into criticism. They believe the enemy propaganda. They've fallen victim to the propaganda of what has been taught to them.
They're very intelligent people. I know them.
Then it has to be
and I know all of them.
Okay.
In fact, some of them used to, in my younger days, some of them even stayed with me. No, there's something inherently wrong with us. वही है, gates to India have always been opened from within, and the worst part is that Fortress India, so long as you have cracks in the wall, ये चलता रहेगा.
तो सर ये जो gates from within है, how do we deal with this problem?
Yeah, education. Exactly what I'm saying. Institutional integrity, Fortress India, Fortress India, Fortress India. College after college, school after school. Spread people out. Get this message across. Get people to talk sense also. हम military history में we noticed this. We would train people to go out and speak. They go and start talking about themselves. मैंने ये कर दिया, मैंने वो कर दिया. भैया तुम्हारी story होगी बड़ी अच्छी. I'm sure you're not lying. Everybody is telling the truth. But there has to be
the message
pattern.
Has to be
and
larger
this,
than
there has to be a core where you have to start dealing with this. This has to be I may be talking utopian rubbish to most people because it may sound like kya bol raha hai. But the fact is this is a revolution. And this revolution has to come, and it has to come damn fast because this whole artificial intelligence and social media is choking you like this.
Yes, it is.
It's becoming so complex, you don't know what the hell you yourself are saying. You might see yourself on TV saying something completely different to what you actually say.
No, I agree with that. That transition is very fast. And so, I can see that happening on different, different channels.
It's happening at the rate which is absolutely unbelievable. I think this 4-day war has elevated warfare to a completely different level. It's not going to be the same again.
It's not.
And the biggest danger also of this 4-day configuration is that the Chinese have sat and watched the entire thing. They've seen all your defensive measures. Everything must be telemetrized. They must be checking every damn thing. You will now, in many ways, require new doctrines and everything as to how to handle things because you play. For them, it's like a war game.
Yeah, they must be quietly watching. But
and not just them, even the Americans.
But how did the Chinese equipment turn out to be so bad?
It's not bad.
What happened then? I mean,
I don't know. So I wouldn't like to really get into. I can speculate, but that is not. हमको मालूम नहीं. And I don't think all that will come out later, whatever the real story is. I think the Chinese have done a lot of amazing work also. Okay, now while we are looking at this, I'll tell you, I can talk about one thing which I do know. The S-400 systems which Pakistan have were routed through China.
S-400?
They also have the S-300. Whatever
they have the 300. I think so. The Chinese air defense, the HQ-9s.
But they were bought from Russia.
Because people will get confused. That's why I want to clear it.
So
the Chinese
what they did was, well, I'm not a technical guy, but I know broadly what happened. So they did a lot of reverse engineering. 2014, they signed a deal with Pakistan, and some of those were given to Pakistan. They attached some sort of a device on that where you can now, you don't have to emit a radar signal, but you actually latch onto any incoming radar, and it's called radiation. I don't know.
Right, IR or something. Yeah.
So when the missile now goes from you, the pilot doesn't even have a missile lock signal because वो तुम्हारे radar पे पकड़ा हुआ है. It's not a reflecting back thing.
Okay.
And you will only know that missile is coming at you when you are about 50 miles from you or whatever, even less than that. You have
in the kill zone.
few seconds to react.
Yeah, in the kill zone, basically.
So this is a very major threat.
Mhm.
And I think I was talking to a couple of Air Force officers who, I don't know how much, as I said, I'm not a technical guy, but these kind of things, I mean, if the Chinese were watching the Americans, I'm sure we've learned a lot.
Mhm.
And while we're talking about this, let me give you the example, what I call the Padmavati story. I'm forgetting her exact name, but Padmavati is one name which is stuck in my head, but I don't think that was her name. It was Revati or something like that. I did the film on the light combat aircraft in 2003 or 5 or something like that.
The Parchanda.
हाँ, ये जो अपना Tejas.
Tejas. Acha, Tejas, sorry.
So if I was the first guy to fly with it, and I had done a lot of flying with the Air Force, and we were doing this film called Wings of the Future. वो सब film कहाँ चली गई मुझे अभी भी नहीं मालूम. I've been trying to get my hands on it. In fact, the Air Chief Baduria was the test pilot at that time. There was another pilot called Soggy Krishna, etc. So the amazing thing was that when we were making this movie, the director first was Abdul Kalam, and then it was, I think, after Abdul Kalam, there was one more, and then I think it was KH, and then it was Philip Rajkumar, Air Marshal Rajkumar. He was from the Air Force. And Rajkumar, great sense of humor. Everything is like Bhavarsa is Bharatiya Vayu Sena. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man. One of our best test pilots. So एक दिन मेरे को गाड़ी में बोलते हैं, I was shooting the film, so we just drove and went and stopped near a bus stop there. 5 o'clock in the evening. And he says, wait for Padmavati.
Okay.
I don't know who the hell Padmavati was, whatever. After a while, one girl comes with a umbrella and a tiffin box and sits in the bus stop for exactly a minute. The bus comes, door opens, gets it, goes off. So Philip says, that is the future of India. Now let me tell you about her. The mission control box of the Sukhoi, when we bought the Sukhois, she redesigned it.
Okay.
And the Sukhois were flying with the Indian developed mission control box or something like that. Again, as I said, I'm not
we indigenized it, basically.
And he said she made it.
Wow. Okay.
The Americans have been trying to get her to shift over to NASA or some organization. They're telling her what you're earning in Indian rupees, we'll give it to you in dollars and multiply it by 10.
Obviously.
But you come. She'll never go. She had a baby. She took 2 weeks maternity leave, handed over the child to her mother, back at work.
That's ridiculous.
He says there are 1,000 Padmavatis working in HAL, working in ADA, working in BEL, working in this, working in ISRO, working here, working there. And it's not gender specific. It could very well be Shrivar Swasan or Iqbal or anyone.
Anybody. Yeah.
And it is these silent workers now, whose work has actually come to the fore now when all these defensive things are beginning to happen. When the country is beginning to realize there is a defensive umbrella which is mainly made in India. I made a film in 1999, India, in self-reliance through indigenization for the Navy. I've seen what we can do here. That's the time we constructed INS Delhi and INS Mysore. We were making submarines. Navy was far advanced than the other services at that time. And what these ISRO guys and everybody have done in terms of, very hats off. But then again, calm down. You don't have to immediately start and get everybody on TV. स्पोक्सपर्सन के आप फैमिली पर जा रहे हो कि ये इनकी बहन है, ये इनका घर है, इनका पंखा है, ये ऐसे घूमता है, बाकी अरे ये कमान हद होती है।
टीआरपी की मतलब
चुप रहो भैया,
मतलब
थोड़ा सा धैर्य रखो, because you every time you open your mouth, you're giving away information, and information is your biggest. In a war of narratives, any information can be used against.
True, and that is what happened with Jyoti Malhotra case, I believe.
I don't know anything about that because I
was that YouTuber who has been caught.
I was driving and
spying. So that's how information gets multiplied. Even ordinary people with just a camera are susceptible to.
We are all part of national security.
All part of national security.
And we keep fighting and we keep saying, "अरे हमारा ये है, हमारा मणिपुरी है, हमारा ये हो गया, ये हो गया." अरे भैया ये सब ठीक है. You'll all go down together. Yeah. That's why Fortress India. Yeah. And the whole concept of Indian warfare has always been elephants and fortresses. Now, There's no point saying that उसमें ये नहीं है, वो नहीं है, जो भी है ठीक है, तुम्हारा है, अब लड़ो, और उसके पीछे से लड़ो.
How real is the threat from northeast, sir? From the eastern
What
border?
do you mean by threat from the northeast?
What I mean, sir, is one from Myanmar, two from the Rohingya issue, which is coming up, because there are multiple reports coming in that they're heavily weaponizing the ISIS. The Americans are playing a hand in it. They are weaponizing, they're arming the Rohingyas in Chittagong Hill tracks, and they're preparing them for a larger conflict within Myanmar also and India also. How do you see that scene playing out?
It's very dangerous. Let me just put it that way. What is happening? And I've also just finished shooting again in Arunachal in the last few months. I'm doing these 3 books, which are going to all heads of states of the world. There's a definite demographic shift in terms of, like, for example, I shot in Arunachal as part of the Northeast trilogy in 2008 to 2011. I was doing that. Abhi jab main gaya hu, the animistic, the tribal culture is virtually fading away. Christianity is really coming in a big way. Now, the whole Naga Patkai area, whether it was Nagaland, Manipur, leave the Maitis out, but the Kukis and the Nagas,
areas,
the entire Mizoram belt, etc., even the Meghalaya area, Khachis and Garos, Christianity was very well entrenched because of missionaries. Missionaries could never really get into Arunachal for various reasons. Partly because the Arunachalis were quite, they defended themselves and they didn't want any outside thing. In fact, even the Dono Pauli religion got an identity because Christianity was trying to push its way in. Otherwise, all tribes then started calling it this, that, etc. And they don't have any ghas ke symbols hote hain. It's very simple. Now you'll see a lot of churches have come up, everything is, I've got no problems. Everybody is free to do what they want. I mean, that's their religion. But when it starts happening on a major scale, you begin to see a pattern.
Yes.
And this is emerging. This is definitely an issue. And the irony is that this entire thing has happened under the watch of the BJP, who, have been sort of very...
muscular, we'll call it.
Well, they've had the whole ideology. See, the other thing, again, I think I'm no apologist for anybody. I don't like any political party. Like or not like is not the issue. I'm not part of anything. I only believe in this country and what's good for this country. Even the RSS, for example, has been completely misunderstood. They've not been able to explain who they are. And the general perception in the educated mind in India is the perception handed down by the Congress and the West over the last few years.
I agree, because that is something I saw in Kerala as well. That's a huge problem for the RSS.
RSS has done some remarkable work. They do fantastic stuff. Like every other organization, they also do silly things. Even you can go anywhere in the country. You look at all the, whether it's Muslim or whether it's Christianity, churches do great work. They also do, all kinds of funny stuff. The Muslim communities have their own this thing. वहाँ पे भी गड़बड़. अब ये सब ना इसको handle करना आसान भी नहीं है, क्योंकि whole thing is so fractured. But we don't have a choice here. We are all in the same boat. अब जाओगे तो जाओगे कहाँ?
कहीं नहीं.
और आपको सबसे बड़ा दुश्मन तो आपने कभी देखा ही नहीं है. वहाँ भी पाकिस्तान और हम चाइना और म्यांमार और इनसे की बातें कर रहे हैं, और we are even talking about the enemy within the country, but the real enemy is you and me. Environmentally, we are heading for such bloody disaster, we don't even know it's coming here. Your temperatures are soaring, your waters are drying up. You're saying हम पाकिस्तान का पानी काट रहे हैं, अपना ही पानी जाने वाला है यार, तुम क्या बात कर रहे हो?
सर, जिससे मुझे याद आया पाकिस्तान के पानी काटने से, where do you see India and Pakistan going from here now?
Well, frankly speaking, if you were to ask me, as somebody who's been following this in my own way, what would I really would have liked to see emerge? I'd say the hell with the rest of the world. Actually, what Putin has suggested, the Russia, India, China bloc, why are you not developing? We have to bury the ghosts of 62. The Chinese have to get over there hang-ups with the Russians have to get over the hang-ups with these guys. The economic center, it makes the maximum sense here. You've got everything if you bring this into power. All this will fall into place. Bangladesh, Pakistan, Iran, EO. This, I'm not saying that these are the three major countries. You create that whole block. Pakistan will have to be a part of it. Otherwise, it will always remain a sore point and will remain a mercenary platform for the United States, which they can't afford now because they're so deeply in bed with the Chinese.
So which is a bigger problem for us, the Americans or the Chinese?
I don't know. I think the Americans.
The Americans?
Simply because I was just seeing something on social media the other day. I think they quote Winston Churchill here.
Mm-hmm.
They say the Americans will always do the right thing after they've exhausted all other options.
No,
So, which is kind of true. I like the Yanks. Yeah, I mean, I've studied in the US also for a year. When I was a kid, my dad was in Fort Benning. Wonderful people, no issues on that front. We, as a culture, have a lot of leaning. We are a democracy, all that kind of stuff. But the kind of insidious nonsense which is going on, even in '62, what happened in Tibet, Dalai Lama being brought out, etc., we paid the price. But the Americans have always, they've also held our hand after the '62 war. So, but then they went and armed Pakistan to such an extent. What the hell did we fight in Pakistan? I mean, like we are now thinking we are fighting Chinese equipment and all that kind of stuff. We were fighting American equipment at that time.
At that time.
And what's the difference? So this game will continue. And I think the problem is the more India develops and the more India becomes self-reliant and the more India actually strengthens up. And I think Prime Minister Modi today has a tremendous opportunity. Whichever way you look at it. He has survived that turbulence of the first 11 years of his governance. And now he has to realize that he himself has reached a stage where he is the only one actually who can today back these kind of movements and be very clear and articulated. He has to stop talking in terms of a lot of this posturization has to go. It is now time for action. Start cleaning out the stables. Get the police in order to start with. Make sure that the common citizen feels safe. If he has a problem, the cops will take his FIR. They don't today.
Yeah, we need reforms.
तुमको जूते पड़ेंगे अगर कुछ होगा और जिसके पास पैसे हैं तो सभी को मालूम है
अभी तो
ये सारा आपको मोड़ना पड़ेगा और कौन कर सकता है यू कांट इवन से कि कोई बाहर से आके करेगा नहीं होगा because that guy will be too he'll be battered in trying to break down the walls of this and he'll also go the same way. So this movement has to come from existing organizations within India, whether it's the government, whether it's the RSS, whether it is the Muslim factions. Now, for example, this whole thing from Deoband and this thing that everybody will support India. It's a huge thing, yeah. Nobody will talk negative. एक फतवा गया उसके बाद एक चूचू नहीं हुई
नहीं इस बार Asaduddin Owaisi the way I think Asaduddin Owaisi showed a lot of courage.
He's shown courage, he's shown this thing, and let's walk forward. Don't keep saying me, he said that time.
So I at the time of the test he stood that test far more,
and hats off to him.
Hats off to him. The Congress was no match to him, but
Congress ka to I really don't know what to say.
That's something else. But sir, tell me something. Dalai Lama is aging. How do you see Arunachal shaping up, or is there going to be trouble from China, from Tibet?
I don't think so. I think they've already decided that the next Dalai Lama is going to be a Chinese this thing.
Okay.
And Tibet, unfortunately, has been forsaken by the world. There was a time when something could have happened. China is too deeply entrenched in Tibet.
So it's fate accompli for us in Tibet, you would say?
It looks like it. What are you going to do, really, in China? I mean, Tibet is not a sustainable terrain where it's, armies sweeping across and tanks going this way. Those days of warfare are over. The only thing that can happen is people themselves. But in Tibet, people are no longer there. They've been sort of replaced. There's been a kind of a demographic clearing up of the entire thing. तो कौन लड़ेगा और किसको लिबरेट करोगे यार, क्या कर रहे हो?
और किसके लिए?
अपना ही घर संभाल लो यार अभी. And but the Yanks will always keep playing the Tibetan card. They haven't been playing it of late for a long time. But initially, the whole Pakistan's build-up in the 50s was because they thought that Tibet was the soft underbelly of China.
Of China, yes.
But I don't think they see it that way anymore, because the whole concept of warfare, everything I said, missiles and everything have now even made bases somewhat redundant. Yeah.
Sir, IWT का क्या होगा? Do you think we're going to have another very short war with Pakistan? Will they try? Because I have a, and please hear me out for this. I have a very, a hunch where Pakistan will further try to internationalize this issue on Kashmir, and they might trigger some limited conflict again, knowing that the Americans back them, knowing that the Chinese are there. They might again try to,
They are not they will.
They will. It's a matter of when.
Yeah. And we are already committed, because we've already said that any act of terrorism will be an act of war. So you've already given Field Marshal Munir a possible 6-star. I don't know if there's something higher than a Field Marshal, because if he...
There is Reich Marshal used to be there in the German army.
So he may have 6 stars by the end of it. And what might eventually choke him is the number of stars he has, and he doesn't know where to sit. At the rate at which he's going, he'll give himself a star a day or a star a week. So
no, but he will end up like
Ayub Khan.
It's an Ayub Khan.
क्या तमाशा बना के रखा हुआ है?
Ayub Khan.
Imran Khan ने बोला ना कि why is he calling himself Field Marshal? He should have declared himself King Emperor of
Pakistan. But I see that he'll end up like Ayub Khan. Far worse, I think he'll end up with Zia. But this man is dangerous because he's a mix of Zia and Musharraf. Both policies he's pursuing on his end, ideologically as well as tactically.
Pakistani general today, the circumstances are such, regardless of what they think privately. Firstly, I don't think they think privately. They are so heavily indoctrinated into all this that they actually believe what the hell they're saying.
Yeah.
Bachpan se, from second lieutenant days, you're brought up in a certain way, this, that, and the other. It's I would expect Indian generals also to be absolutely dedicated to the Chinese generals dedicated to their cause. So this is something which is a given. The Pakistan is a major challenge. It's a major challenge for us now. Pakistan was almost irrelevant.
We had completely made them irrelevant.
We hadn't. The circumstances had made them irrelevant. Their own problems. अब उनका आपने प्रेशर कुकर में से सीटी उतार दी है. अब वो सीटी मारा जा रहा है in various directions. Everybody else is running कि अब दाल पकने वाली है. And what can I get out of the whole thing? India, unfortunately, has never been able to sell its narrative to the West. Because the West has always looked at you as a bit of a basket case.
Yes.
And the more you develop, the more they hate you. They don't like it. They don't like it.
They want you to be subservient to them.
Because they have ruled over us here for 200 years. It's not an easy thing to get over.
But sir, I have another question. A large part of what we were able to achieve in Kashmir after 2019 was because of the irrelevance of Pakistan. Pakistan becoming relevant.
I think the Kashmiri people, I am anticipating the rest of your question. I think the Kashmiri people today hold the key. This is the time where they have to now really stand up and be counted. They have so far after Pahalgam, they've made the right noise. It is the Kashmiri people who have to tell these guys, enough is enough. FO. I'm not going to elaborate on that because it's a family, youngsters worth. Pakistan has had the narrative in its hand all along. The children of the students, and it has to start from students, because your Kashmir University, everything, it has to come from within. Your talking, my talking.
No, it's not going to change.
It's going to have no impact. हम बोलते रहे जो बोलते हैं, कोई ज्यादा से ज्यादा बोल देगा हाँ ठीक है सही बोला था नहीं बोला था, लेकिन शब्द आ जाता है ना, वो हॉकी वाली कमेंट्री वाले जो होता था कि इधर गोविंद ऐसे इसको इससे पास किया, ये क्या डी में आ गए 16 अगस्त के, लेकिन वहां पे वो डिफेंस थी, उन्होंने बॉल क्लियर कर दी. अब वो लेकिन इज द ब्लडी प्रॉब्लम इन इंडिया. एवरीथिंग वी गॉट अ काउंटर आर्गुमेंट.
No, because I feel that
this
Kashmir
movement has to come from Kashmir.
This movement has to come
and from the youth.
And how to drive that movement?
Truth. एक हमारा हम खुद गए गुजरे अब after war, everything I've just said, But I still believe, and that is what drives me. I swear that is my only driving force today, because even I'm facing a lot of crises where the police is dead, the judiciary is not doing anything, everything is happening all around us. You say, what the heck's going on? There is one slogan which is there with our Ashoka crest, which says Satyameva Jayate.
Yes.
We can only keep telling the damn truth, hammering away at it. Sooner or later, truth will prevail.
With that, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for giving me the
Thanks
time.
a lot, yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for watching this podcast. If you liked it, kindly like it, share it, subscribe it. You can also contribute by becoming members or giving your contribution through super likes, super chats, and super thanks. I'll be back with another episode very soon. And till then, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.